this week's video on Damon Alexander Woodwork, I struggled to do basic maths. I eat some crisps while surrounded by dogs. I chuck something in the bin, and most importantly, I'm taking on my biggest challenge yet as I attempt to build the largest dining table I've ever made. I appreciate you clicking on this video. That's the intro over. Let's get into it. For this build, the brief from my client was that he was wanting an extendable dining table, something that would sit at around 1.8 meters long in its standard size, but then be able to open out to about 2.2 meters long when extended. He didn't have a particular preference on wood, however, he was very clear in making the point that he wanted it to be a statement piece, a bit of a wow factor. And for me, whenever I hear the words wow factor, it's got to be walnut. So we ended up choosing these, two large slabs of American black walnut. They had this lovely straight grain running through them, but also some really interesting streaks of sapwood. And as soon as I saw that contrast, I knew I could use those sapwood lines to hopefully create a really clean, symmetrical look across the tabletop. As you can see from the footage here, there was some pretty suspect cracks running through both of these pieces, and dealing with that was my first priority. So I got out the track saw and I ripped down either side of these cracks on both slabs. That would then give me 4 clean pieces that I could work with. And from there, the goal would then be to line everything back up and glue it together to get the best grain match possible. It's probably worth mentioning that I'd actually sold my house about 6 weeks before taking on this table order, which meant I didn't have a workshop to use. Fortunately, my stepdad was kind enough to offer up his single garage, which as you can see, was a bit of a tight squeeze. The good news, however, is that whilst I'm doing this voiceover, I can now reveal that I've bought a new house, and on the land is this, a large double garage. Granted, in this footage here, doesn't look that impressive. It's half finished and there's nothing inside it. However, I have been filming the process of turning that empty blank canvas into my dream workshop. So if you enjoy watching this video, hopefully you'll come back to the channel and watch that one too. Anyway, I'll now stop talking and let the footage take over. This next part shows the tabletop being jointed, glued and clamped together, and then flattened on the CNC machine, ready for the next stage of the build. clip it half in here, innit?
Well, we'll just bring it out, put that end on the floor, and sit down.
Okay, so we are now working with a perfectly flat piece of wood, and the next stage will be to get some support on the underside of this tabletop, and I'll be doing that by using the steel T-bars. They are a great way of preventing any future cupping or twisting of this tabletop. And what I'm doing here is marking out the section that I'll be routing into so I can then sit these T-bars flush with the underside. For two reasons mainly. Firstly, I think it gives a much higher end finish, and secondly, they'll then be out the way so I don't need to worry about them when it comes to installing the legs. After watching some other videos on YouTube, I didn't realise how divisive these T-bars or C-channels were to put on the underside of a table. Some people seem to get really offended by it. They say it ruins the table, it looks horrible. If I'm honest, I'm not too worried about offending people currently, because I'll be lucky if this video gets about 10 views. So let's not get too caught up in it, alright? I think they work, I think they're worth installing, so let's just leave it there. Whilst we're on the topic of people being offended, yep, you've guessed it, I will be using some epoxy resin on this project. I personally love the way that black resin looks with walnut. I still had some small cracks that needed filling on the tabletop, and the client really liked the idea of using some bow ties in the design. So it made perfect sense to combine these two things and create a really cool feature on the tabletop. Now I'm sure that some of you are going to say it looks terrible and you hate it, and a few of you might think it looks really good. Either way, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it wasn't your table, it was the client's, and the client was really happy with the end product. So all was good. So now was the time to cut a slice off each end of the table, and they would then become the smaller extendable pieces that would fit back on. I thought it was worthwhile installing some more T-bar on the underside of these. They were a much smaller piece, and that would normally mean even more likely to try and warp as the seasons change throughout the year. It's surprisingly time-consuming installing these to be flush with the underside. It's straightforward, but it is slow and monotonous. But these were the last two that I had to install, and with those out the way, I could then move on to the next part of the project, and that was the legs. Here's what I would be using: a 100mm thick piece of American black walnut, which in theory should match the tabletop grain and colour quite closely. Looking at it now, you'd expect this next part to be relatively easy, right? I've got the piece of wood I need, and I can't move forward with the rest of the build until I can get this cut down into rails and legs and then assembled. But here's the truth. When it comes to actually making those first few cuts on a large and, let's face it, very expensive piece of wood like this, I'm terrible at it. I just overthink, I procrastinate, I stall as much as I can because I just worry I've done my calculations wrong. Eventually though, I will make that first cut, and as soon as I do, the confidence comes back and you then remember that you do know what you're doing. When it came to designing the legs, the main priority was finding the right balance between strength and comfort. I needed a design that was sturdy enough to support the weight of this massive tabletop, but also slim and compact enough so it wouldn't get in the way if you've got a load of people sitting at the table. And this was especially important at each end. The goal was to create something that feels solid and reliable without making the seating arrangement too awkward. And I think this design really hit that sweet spot. Also, I'm not skilled enough to be able to create a 3D render of the leg design or use that CAD software stuff, so just keep watching. You'll see the leg design in like a minute's time. Okay, so everything was now square. It had been cut to the right length and the domino holes had been made. I was ready to get everything glued and clamped the next morning. It was only when I went to do this though, I realised I had made a relatively minor but impressively stupid mistake. And here is that mistake. I managed to cut the domino holes on one side of the footrail in completely the wrong orientation, which meant the parts just didn't line up the way they were supposed to. As you can see here, one of the footrails was absolutely fine. It was the other one where I'd managed to get the orientation the wrong way round. Now, it's not a major issue, and it was relatively easy to fix, but you can't help but get really frustrated with yourself when you realise you've made such a stupid mistake. Luckily, I had a small offcut that I used to replace this piece entirely, but I do also show on camera here another fix, which would basically be hammering in some dominoes to plug the wrong holes and then cutting some fresh ones with the machine. I'm sure this would be perfectly sound, but because I had that other offcut, I decided to use that instead. And with that mistake fixed, it was then time to get everything glued and clamped together, sanded, round over all the edges, and then take the legs upstairs to get them attached to the tabletop. When the table was finished, it was going into a large old house with proper flagstones on the floor, so it was safe to assume that things weren't going to be perfectly flat. To make sure that the table ended up sitting nicely without wobbling, I decided to add some heavy-duty adjustable feet to each leg. I actually bought these off Amazon and they were surprisingly cheap, but were ideal for what I needed. I used a 38mm Forstner bit to recess the bases, and then installed threaded inserts so each adjustable foot could be securely attached. With that job done, the next task was figuring out a way that I could attach the extension leaves to the end of the main table. And after doing a bit more research, I actually decided to go with an idea that I'd seen on some previous YouTube videos, and that was using some aluminium extrusion as a way to create a really strong, simple and adjustable connection. After wasting a good 10 minutes trying to film myself throw that bit of bloody cardboard in the bin, I got my stepdad's chop saw blade changed to an aluminium cutting one, sliced this piece down into 4 equal parts, and then drilled the holes for the bolts to go through. Before moving on to the next stage with the extensions, I had some cleaning up that I needed to do on the main table, get rid of some saw marks, and on one end there was a small portion of live edge which I wasn't able to completely lose in the glue up. So I filled that area in with a walnut inlay, and now I just needed to get the track saw out, trim everything up so it was perfectly neat to be able to get these extensions properly attached. So we're almost there now, and if you're still watching, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy these last few steps of the build, which involved adding a small round over to the tabletop, water popping and sanding everything up to 180 grit, and of course, the best bit, applying some finish and finally getting this table ready for delivery. So that's it. Table delivered. Client was very happy, and all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. If you would like, subscribe and comment, it would really help me to grow this channel. Apart from that, take care, and I'll see you on the next video.